What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph Brocast. I'm Dave Koss.
And I'm Matt Milstead. I'm a little less sickly this week than last week, but...
And I'm a little more sickly.
I still got that sexy voice going on.
I got the same crud you have, basically, the October crud.
Yep.
And we didn't even make out.
Nope.
So
I don't even think we saw each other.
No, we didn't.
No.
We don't see each other much, actually. We just talk.
We just talk all the time.
Yeah. We text.
Yep. We're like BFF texters.
BFF texters, and our wives call us each other's boyfriends. So.
Totally.
But this is the Brograph podcast. This is the supplemental podcast to Brograph.com, which is a motion graphics and tutorial website, mainly Cinema 4D and After Effects.
This week, we did some Photoshop. Or at least this week coming up. As of tonight, I guess, there will be a Photoshop one as well.
So it should be up by the time you listen to this.
Yeah, probably.
And I also did one this week called Perfect Circle.
Perfect Circle. Not the band.
Not the band. So I guess mine was basically, to describe it in audio, is how to cut a hole in a piece of geometry without having to use a bool, because that gets messy sometimes.
Yes, it does. You know, it's so funny. I was doing it's funny that you did that tutorial, because I was actually looking for that tutorial literally like a couple days earlier. Nice. I didn't even know you were going to do that tutorial. I was doing a like a phone or something, and it was giving me all sorts of weird geometry every time I did a bool for the camera, the front facing camera. And so
Bools
I was like, how do I do
this?
Yeah, I know. I'm a bool guy. I know it's so bad, but I'm a bool guy. Anyway.
Even mixed down bools are bad, man. It always makes everything so gross and messy. And
yeah, totally. I know. Oh, I'm quite aware.
I'm so big on things being like nice and neat and simple, and you just put that in there and it creates these crazy triangles, and it's like, isn't there a better way?
Yeah, seriously.
So it's a pretty good method. There's a lot of different methods, but tell me what you did on yours that's coming up, because I haven't seen it, obviously, because it's not posted.
Oh, the tutorial? Okay, so the tutorial coming up, it is about basically creating fully repeatable textures, or taking an image that isn't repeatable, or taking an image. I actually do two different examples. One is where I take, I scanned in my wife's lunchbox, because it's kind of got this chevron pattern, and I create a repeating pattern from it. Then I also take another, like a wood pattern that isn't repeatable at all, doesn't have any pattern that is repeatable, and then I create a repeatable pattern from it and show you guys how to do that. It's pretty fun.
Nice.
You know, it's something that, like, I think everyone who works within 3D and Cinema 4D and needs to know how to do.
Definitely.
Because, you know, you can only go so far with the seamless option before you kind of notice that it's obviously repeated, you know, or mirrored. Sometimes you don't want that mirrored look. You know,
right,
because it just flips it to the side instead of actually creating a realistic or an actual whatever, you know, tileable thing. And sometimes I noticed I was doing some textures one day, and I noticed you know, I hadn't created a perfectly repeatable pattern, so when it was repeating, you know, using cubic or UV map or whatever, just being tiled, there was a sliver of like of where you could tell that it was off. So with the method that I show you, you know, you're not going to run into that problem. So
yeah, because what happens a lot of times is you think you have a nice repeating pattern, and then you go to like a wide shot, and in the wide shot you really start to see the discrepancies, like, because you could see them as a pattern, discrepancy patterns.
Yes, totally. And I've been having to do this a lot at my job, because we've been creating these wallpapers, you know, and so we only get like maybe an 8x8 swatch of these, like, you know, sample wallpapers, and we've got to create an entire like 130-inch wall of wallpaper, you know, and so we of course can't have any discrepancies.
Well, you know, last week on the show we talked about the fact that we're going to be doing some shorter tutorials right now while we're working on some background materials for Brograph, and you know, I think there was actually a really good response to the short one that I did this week, and I think there will be for yours too.
Yeah, I agree.
It might be nice that we have these different ones out there, especially stuff like Photoshop.
Yeah, totally.
How it relates to cinema.
Now, I haven't messed with GIMP, so I don't know if this translates over at all, because basically what I'm using is it's called an offset. It's the ability to offset your left and right and move them kind of. It basically takes whatever is on the right side and moves it to the left side and just scoots over the stuff that's on the left side, So you get the seam down the center, but all you have to do is clean up that seam and then it's fully repeatable.
Always got to clean up that seam.
It's gross.
The texture. Wow. The thing about Photoshop is that most of the time you have that if you have After Effects.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
totally.
so I think most of the audience actually will have.
And
Photoshop,
I assumed that most people would. I just didn't know. I know there's some guys out there who are either using the student version or maybe they stole it. Whatever. I'm not here to judge. You can go back and listen to one of our other podcasts for that. But I know some of them are using GIMP. Whatever. To each their own. I don't know if GIMP has that option. So.
And speaking of textures, by the way, somebody posted on Reddit this week in the Cinema 4D subreddit was about cgtextures.com.
Oh, man. So
Did
sad.
you see all that mess?
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny. Like, the day before he wrote it up, I went to CG Textures to download, I don't know, I think it was a wood texture or something like that. And I'm like, oh, this is new. This is new. I mean, it's kind of prettier.
Did it get bought out? I don't know.
Like, here's the thing. They're now textures.com. That's
a name, man.
Yeah.
That's a top level.
They probably had to pay a lot of money for that.
Either that or
website.
Textures.com bought them.
Maybe.
I'd like to
know.
But
I had never gone to textures.com,
Well, maybe somebody owned the domain.
It's the same look. It's the same general look as CG Textures. So it's got to be just a redesign, and they probably just bought textures.com.
Well, here's the thing about it, man. Like, I've never been a big fan of credits because credits are so lame. It's like when you go to the fair and you buy tickets. It's a way to mask
What's itchy
how much
and scratchy money. Oh, it's kind of like regular money, but it's fun. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me $10,000.
Yeah. And then nobody takes it. So, I went on there and I was looking at the difference in prices. Now, some of the high-res textures, like the super high-res textures, the one thing I liked about it is I was a paying member of CG Textures.
As am I.
The $65 a year, which is now like $95 a year, but they automatically, they automatically upgraded me to the top level one, which was, the pro version or whatever you call it, right? Well, before, if I wanted to get the super high res versions, I would get it as far as, okay. Here's how I would use it. I wouldn't use it all month, and then one day I would need it. Yeah. And so I would get on there and I would download like 12 to 20 high res textures, right? Now, the way it worked before is you got 100 meg a day or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think it was more than that. I think it was like a gig.
No,
I could be wrong.
Or maybe it was 100 downloads. I don't remember exactly how it worked. The point is,
it was file size. I know that it
was file size.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was 100 meg a day. I'm pretty certain.
Okay.
And so you would download a whole bunch of things. Now, when you downloaded the high res, they were still pretty small files, like 7 or 8 meg, because that kind of file just isn't that big, even if it is high res. So I would get all this stuff in one day, and then maybe, I don't know, use 80, 90 meg at the very most, and the next day continue working on it and get more. So I got a lot of textures when I get to that point. Now on this new system, you get like 100 credits, or maybe it's 2,500 credits, but it's 2,500 credits a month. Okay, so think of it this way: if you have to download a high res texture, I saw some anywhere from 35 to 75 points per.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, you download 10 things one day. That's 750 credits.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 things the next day. That's another 750 credits. In a few days, you can go through the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're screwed because you're done. There's nothing more you can do for like another 27, 28 days. That's what gets me. That's what gets me with the whole thing.
Also, the free ones, you used to be able to download as many as you want. And they were just lower. They were smaller, medium size, but you could download as many as you want.
I think it was 15 meg.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, well, never mind. Well, then I'm wrong there. They give you 15 free credits, on the new one, but you can't download the extra large ones or anything like that,
What gets me about the whole deal is it's like you have unlimited because when you're going to search for textures, it's usually in chunks. So you do a couple chunks one week, you do a couple chunks another week, and so on. And you don't run out.
Right.
Like you could just wait till the next day. You don't have to wait 28 days. That's my issue with it.
Yeah.
So I wrote them something. And I even wrote in the subreddit, I'm like, I think we should all write to them about this.
How many people do you think actually wrote to them?
Well, some people were like, oh, that's a good idea. And so I wrote to them, and I immediately get back a form letter. It's like this is an issue already, and they already have a form letter written. And they're saying, well, actually, this is better because, and they list because A, B, C, D, and E, everything that we already discussed that we would send because people are going to be mad. Type situation. But then at the end, they write up this thing about, we see based on your past downloads, they looked at my history, that you would have downloaded this many, therefore you would be fine with this plan. I'm thinking, yeah, I would be until I work on a big project. Right. And once I hit that one project, I'm going to be like, I'm going to send them something back. And be like, hey, look, now I'm working on this project and I'm screwed for 27 days. That's my issue. It's the daily issue.
Yeah.
Even if you want to do points, that's fine. But give me like 100 points a day.
Yeah.
Divide it up somehow.
Yeah.
It just seems to me like this is not the right way to go about doing it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I haven't really looked enough into the whole credit system, whether it's actually working out or not. I don't know why they needed to change it, that doesn't really make sense, but whatever.
Well, if it's because they got bought out, then somebody thinks that they're being clever.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like, they changed the pricing, which is kind of crappy, We've been paying for yearly subscription for $60 for years now, now they up the price to, $32 more or whatever. That's kind of, no, I guess you could do the hobby or educational one.
I guess. But
the
here's
hobby
the thing.
plan is only for entities or companies with a turnover of less than $10,000 per year. So if you make less than $10,000, you can buy the year one for $55.
How do you prove that?
I don't know.
So somebody was upset about Skies and HDRIs, which they had already split into a separate business. But there was somebody on there that wrote, hey, if you need HDRIs, here's some free ones that I made. And they linked to their site.
Totally.
Yeah,
I checked those out. They were pretty good.
I used one.
Did you?
Yeah. I did that Octane drone this week.
Oh, yeah.
And that was that.
Did you post that on the blog or anything? Or like the Facebook account? Or Facebook?
I don't know if I did or not. I need to. If I did, I did the first one, which wasn't as good. The last one came out great. I don't know if you saw the last one.
Yeah. It
was
got
really close to the camera. Well, here's the thing, right? It's pretty decent looking. And I'm like, you know what? I could just do this with a camera and my real drone.
That's funny.
So I'm like, I got to do something that you can't do in real life.
Yeah.
So I brought in the camera real close, which you wouldn't want to do because you would, cut your forehead.
Right.
Trying to shoot the drone that close. So.
There was a Mythbusters about whether or not you could actually die from a drone strike, like getting hit with a drone propeller. I didn't actually watch it.
Not with a drone. I've seen some people who have gotten cut up. You'll get your face sliced.
Only.
Like I've seen it. It looks like Freddy Krueger hits you in the face because it hits a couple times, and in that time it kind of slices up or down, and it looks bad. But it's not like the helicopter stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the helicopter stuff will decapitate you, and people have gotten decapitated by those helicopters.
Nice.
There was a real famous one too. He was a really famous helicopter videographer, and he did something wrong one day, and the thing came toward him and literally cut his head off.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it is hardcore. So,
all right.
By the way, I found this out this week in using After Effects 2015, which I have been using, but I haven't really managed to go try and change the setting, which is the fact that it does not video preview when it's rendering.
Can you set that?
No, you cannot. So here's the deal, right? You used to be able to press caps lock and turn off the viewport when you're rendering, because supposedly it's faster that way. So it's been doing that a couple times, and I'm like, well, you know, I figure they just turn that on by default or whatever, and you have to go turn it off somewhere. And it really didn't make a big difference to me, but I was doing a really long render this week, and I'm like, okay, I got to turn that off right now. So I go to look for it, and there's a place in the preferences where you can uncheck the box to say, you know, disable viewport on render, because you want to see, like, sometimes you want to see it because you want to know if something screws up.
Right, totally.
You know, or if you made a mistake, or you want to see the progress where it is or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not rendering out like motion blur or something like that, and you kind of want to see how it's doing.
You just want to keep an eye on things.
Yeah,
that's all. And so I look in there, and you can't uncheck the box. I'm like, what is up with that? Why would they put it in there if you can't uncheck the box? What am I doing wrong? So I start looking it up. And apparently, they completely changed the way that After Effects renders in CC 2015.
Interesting.
To the point where they didn't quite figure out how they're going to display it. So what they did is left the checkbox in because they're going to do it later, but you literally cannot do that right now.
Weird. So they're going to add it in later? They just don't... Yeah. That's weird.
So it's there. It's just not uncheckable.
Huh. And where's that at? Is that in general?
Somewhere in the preferences. I don't remember.
Looking at it right now.
I mean, unless it changed and there's an update that I don't know about in the last couple weeks. But that's what I found when I did a quick search.
Weird.
But that's a little weird. I don't understand why that would be such a hard thing to build in, but...
Yeah, no. Well, I know they're really... I mean, that was the big thing that they were talking about at NAB, was that they were focusing on making it as fast and efficient as possible. And who knows, maybe that was part of it.
It is nice to be able to adjust things while it's playing.
Yeah, totally. And when you've got, you know, with these, with the CUDA cores and stuff, man, when it's running on GPU, it's smoking. Sorry, I had a little Jim Carrey mask moment there.
So speaking of GPU, tell me about the new Vray Beta. How's that going?
I would tell you about how great the GPU rendering is, except it's not out yet.
It's not in the beta at all.
No. I don't know if you guys checked the website at all or saw the Facebook post, but I did a blog post about the new Vray Beta. I got my hands on it finally. So, and here's a funny story how I got my hands on it. I saw the Vray had posted something online on their Facebook page, and I followed them. I was like, dude, what do I got to do in order to get my hands on this beta? You know, I've already sent in my request. And so I got a message back saying, oh, all requests should be handled in 1 to 2 days. So I responded, and I said, dude, I've been waiting like a week and a half. I'll try it again. So I redid it again. I sent in my information, and sure enough, the next day, I got it. And I was so excited.
Seems to me like they didn't handle this beta release very well.
I don't know. I haven't been using Vray long enough to know what the previous beta release was like. I do find it interesting that it is an open beta, and all you have to do is request the information. I mean, you have to have owned Vray, but you request the information, and there it goes. You know. So
anyway, it seems like it could be more automated, though.
I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But you have to send. It's weird. You have to send like the name that you signed up with, the digit of your cinema serial that you have associated with your V-Ray that you purchased, as well as all this other junk.
That always bugs me.
4 other things.
That always bugs me when you have to send in your cinema serial.
Yeah, I know.
Because
and what's weird is that it doesn't even it doesn't require your cinema serial in order to install it. I mean, you do have to have your V-Ray key within your so basically when you install it, you create a copy that you can install 3.25 along with 1.9 or 2.55, whatever you want to call it. You just have to make a copy of your entire R16 or R17 folder and just basically duplicate it and then replace the files. So you're opening up a different version of Cinema 4D, depending on which version you want to use. Excuse me. So I got it all installed.
I was going to say that really bugs me for the fact that I can't easily transfer plugins between copies.
Yeah,
like from 16 to 17, or from one at work on a work machine to home, or anything like that, because it's going to have a different serial. And the reason is because they take your Cinema 4D serial and they hash it with your serial or whatever it is to give you a serial for you to type in. Yeah, and when you type it in, it runs against that or whatever. So what happens when I take it? You take it home, you try and use it on your own version, or you try and put it on your secondary machine or something at work and move it to the other one, and it doesn't work. And then you have to go in and say, I need to request a new serial number, and you have to give them the Cinema 4D serial for the other machine. Yeah. What a pain! Like, why can't they do it like the other ones, like Octane, where you just do an activation and a deactivation?
Here's the thing with V-Ray on for Maya or for 3ds Max, they give you a dongle. Like, you buy a dongle and you can just move to whichever machine. I think Cinema 4D is one of the only ones that does not have the dongle. Like the actual Chaos Group people, when they're doing their V-Ray, you have to purchase a dongle along with it.
And you know what makes it more complicated?
And it's a floating license, I believe, that you can move from computer to computer. You just have to have that dongle. Right. So it's not like that with Cinema 4D, which I wish it was.
Well, X Particles does that too.
Oh, really?
And it's annoying because, for example, last year I got X Particles 2.5, right? And I had it installed on one computer. And then R16 came out, and I got the serial for R16, and I had to send in something for X Particles and say, hey, I've got R16, and I would like to change my serial to match my R16 serial number. So I do that. I have to wait for them. They send me a new serial number. And then the problem with that is when you register Cinema, they give you, and I don't understand why this is.
They give you a temporary one?
A temporary serial number that works for 30 to 90 days, and your Cinema says unregistered at the top until a certain time period, and then it expires, and they give you a real serial. And at that point, you take the real serial and you type it in because your Cinema doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, so you've got to do this two different times in order to request. Yeah, it is.
Really, and the next particle says, "Oh, well, this doesn't match anymore," and you're like, "Geez!" And you send it in again, and by then it's like X Particles comes out with a new version.
Yeah,
and you're like, just give me one serial I can use. Why does it have to be so complicated?
Yeah, I do really like the way Octane does it. Being able to log in. And then deactivate the one on that computer. Yeah, and what's great is you can deactivate it online. From their website, which is cool.
Yeah, because if you leave it on another computer, or if you had it in version 15 and you're moving to 16, or on my example, sometimes I need to go over to the PC side to do something.
Yeah.
And I have to reactivate on the PC side.
Now, I've heard that it may take up to an hour to deactivate and then reactivate. Is that true? I haven't ever had to do it.
No, I only had that problem one time where it just would not deactivate. And I tried everything. I tried internally. I tried online. I had to contact support, and then they got it working for me. Because you would hit deactivate, and it would say there and say it was deactivated, but then you would refresh the page, and it still said it was activated.
Interesting.
But you can only deactivate it every hour. So you have to be real careful when you do
That's
it.
What
if
it
you
was.
are going to do it.
That's what it was. You could only deactivate it once an hour. Okay.
Because if you do that and then you reactivate it somewhere else and you're like, oh, I didn't want to do that, and you go back to your other machine, you have to wait an hour.
Yeah, that sucks.
And you might screw yourself there. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah. Word. Yeah. So anyway, new V-Ray. No, it's all right. We went off on a tangent there, which is cool. So new V-Ray. I got it all installed, and unfortunately, the big things that I was looking for, and I wrote this on my blog post for Brograph. If you go onto our website and check out our blog post, I wrote a blog post. I put a couple of example images in there, and you can see kind of the difference between the two. One thing, the big things that we were excited about, like the interactive preview renderer as well as the GPU rendering, they're not active yet, which sucks. That's the biggest things that we were looking forward to, and they're just not there.
Is this an animated GIF you put in here?
Yeah.
This is the first time I've looked at it.
Yeah. I did an animated GIF. I should have marked which one was which,
Oh, yeah. Well, you can always go back and fix that.
Yeah, I know. But the one, so basically, what? Did you? Oh, that's the podcast. Okay. I accidentally clicked on podcast instead of blog. So now the two big things that I wanted to be there, the GPU rendering and whatever, they're not there. And that's kind of sad. But I will say the coolest thing about this is that it's fast. It is
faster?
It is faster, yes. It's at least 25% faster. I will say, if you see my blog post, I did 2 renders. I opened up 2.55, 1.9, whatever you want to call it, and then 3.25, and I opened up the exact same project file. I didn't make any changes, made sure all the GI settings and everything were exactly the same, and then I just hit render. And the first one out of the old version rendered out at 4 minutes and 2 seconds, and the new version renders out at 3 minutes and 7 seconds. So it's 25% faster. I mean, that's pretty good. But the biggest thing with it that I'm really excited about is shadows are so clean.
Oh, really?
They are very clean. Even these subtle shadows. Now, I don't know if this is the way it's going to be in the final version, and I'm really hoping it does. But the subtle shadows, they were smooth, and they were really soft and really clean, and I was really excited about that because think about it. You're getting 25% faster results. So, stuff is going faster, and you're also getting a better quality image. And that's what really, really got me excited about this. And I think once we get the final version and being able to use that GPU rendering and stuff, oh my gosh, it's just going to be killer. It is going to be killer. Now, what is the shadow? What are the issues you usually have with shadows? Where you say it's cleaner, is it grainy? Is it jaggedy? Grainy. It's grainy. It's just a kind of a grainy image. If you go into the blog and you look at the 2 images, oh my gosh, come on! If you look at the 2 images that I posted, if you look at the shadows kind of behind the books for the close-up images. The top one is from the first one, and it's really hard to see on some of these compressed JPEGs, but you just kind of see that speckled shadow, just a little bit of grainy shadow, and it's not there at all on the other one.
Did you use the bookcase maker for this, by the way?
No, I did not.
Oh, I'm just curious.
No, this is a scene that I bought from Arch Interiors, I believe it was. So I've got a whole ton of Arch Interior scenes that I use.
Cool.
And this is one that I knew was in V-Ray, and I knew I didn't have to mess with it all, so I just opened it up and saw what happened. Now, one of the big significant things that I saw is that it moves your textures for some reason. Which is weird to me. And I don't know if that's a bug or not. They've got a way to report the bugs, which I'm going to tell them, say, hey, check this out. But that's one thing. And there's also some weird, like, if you look at the animated GIF that I made, the shelves on the big bookcase, you see where the shelves are. Like, it kind of creates this black shadow on the material. It's just kind of weird. That's a bug that I'm going to point out as well. But anyway, I'm really excited about this. Once the GPU rendering comes about, man, it's gonna be great. So another thing, I don't know if they did this in the old version. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but I'm gonna. So with the new Vray RT ability, is the RT engine is what gives you the GPU and the CPU rendering. Okay, so you're able to render the interactive preview renderer with GPU, but you're also able to render it with CPU as well. So you've got you can use the different engine, and it gives you 3 different options. You've got the CPU engine, you've got the OpenCL single kernel, and then you've got the CUDA single kernel as well. Which I don't really know what that means, but it sounds like you can use OpenCL or your CUDA drivers. Like, you don't have to just have CUDA drivers in order to, like, it will run on any graphics card, which that's pretty cool. That is a big difference between what Octane can do and what Vray can do.
The kernel.
So
kernel
but
panic.
What's weird? It says RT error. Type, and at 0 is CPU engine, 1 is OpenCL single kernel, and then I've got 4, which is CUDA single kernel. So I'm wondering if there's a 2 and a 3 in there somewhere that they're waiting to put out. I don't know. So it's cool. Yeah, I'm really digging it. I mean, it's definitely not for show yet. It's not ready to run with the big dogs, but it is getting there. And I'm hoping by the end of the year that this is going to be, like, fully up and running, and they're going to be good to go. So
cool.
That's my initial review of the new Vray. I'm really excited about it, and the image quality it's the shadows. I mean, I'm so excited about the shadows and the fact that it's rendering so much faster.
Meanwhile, I'm still waiting on that new Octane.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't think it's ever coming.
But everybody's writing about it in the forums and stuff too.
Yeah, I've given up hope. Hope is dead.
It's there. They're doing stuff. I mean, they have so much interest and so many people involved, and I think that they're running up against some possible issues, and I'm wondering if it has to do with whatever they're doing to make it work with OpenCL.
Could be the case. Very well could be the case.
If that's a fact, maybe they're, last time around they gave all 1.0 version people a beta of 2. So I'm hoping maybe they'll come out at least with the beta.
Yeah.
Which I hope that beta to them isn't that, that version on the website. The version on the website is pretty sweet. I don't know if you've played with it yet.
I have, but like I can't really tell what's different about it because it's the standalone version, Like,
right.
I just don't. Well, I've never played with the standalone version. I've only messed with the Cinema 4D version.
Well, there were no particles in the last one. That's the biggest thing.
Oh, yeah, that could be a huge thing.
That, you can do flame and clouds and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually saw someone on the subreddit the other day saying, sorry guys, I'm away from Cinema 4D because they just can't handle water or creating water or something like that, and they're moving over to Maya. I mean, if that's the case, and Octane can handle that, heck yeah.
Oh, I don't know about water. That's, yeah.
Just download Blender. Blender's free.
I know. Water is the one thing that I wish they would work on, and I don't know. I mean, that's the one thing missing. But water is such a different animal.
Houdini, they're incorporating Houdini.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, why? We've talked about this before. Why do they need to do it themselves when they can just outsource it to someone else?
That's true. That's true. Just different film for the camera.
Just different film for the. Oh, that needs to be a T-shirt. That needs to be a T-shirt. Different film for the camera.
Different film for the camera,
or something like that.
Different film for the camera. So,
speaking of T-shirts.
Yeah, speaking of T-shirts, ours are on the way.
Yeah.
Our sample versions, anyway.
We're excited.
They're all done. They're ready to go, but we just want to double check the quality before we release them to the public.
As soon as I get mine, I'll post a picture online so you guys can see on the blog.
Here's the thing. I think the price is reasonable. We're going to do it for like $19.99, and I think it's fully reasonable price for a shirt, especially when you take into account the fact that you're supporting our tutorial site.
Yeah, totally.
We put a lot of content out there, and it's a great way to support us because it's not just the fact that you get a cool shirt to wear, with a cool phrase on the back or whatever, but you're advertising for us, which is fun. We appreciate that. And the money that you're spending on it is also going to help us fund this entire site, which is a venture in itself.
Yeah, I mean, we started this, we were pulling out of our own pockets and stuff, and I mean, we like you see the numbers on YouTube and stuff. If you guys want to know the honest truth, we only make like $8 a month, maybe.
Yeah, it's not a lot because we put so much money back into it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just the site cost alone, and paying for upkeep, and I had to buy Octane. So
there's a lot of stuff that we actually end up spending money on for this thing to work. So we're lucky to be at a break-even point with it, but we really want to give it a push so we actually start making it profitable.
Yeah.
And so that's one way you can do it. Of course, we got some other things like we talked about coming down the pipeline too, and that's really what we hope takes off and makes us some money so that we can take this to another level and maybe even do it full time. Who knows?
Totes.
That would be really great. It's one of those things where you always hear, "Do what you love,"
and you won't work a day in your life.
Yeah, this is something we'd love to do full time. So hopefully, if this is something you like and you want to throw us a few bucks. That way you can do that. Just buy a shirt. It's easy, and it's going to be an Amazon link. So look for that.
Also, if you've got ideas for shirts, send them in. If we like your idea, if we like the images you created or whatever, send them in. We'll make it a shirt. We'll send you a couple free copies.
And we're going to have a couple different versions. Some are going to be kind of along the same lines. Like we'll have one line that all has the same picture on the front, which is just our logo, and maybe the back will have a different slogan, but then we're going to do some other ones that are completely different, and maybe they'll just say Brograph somewhere on them, but they're going to be, I don't know, maybe something really cool on the front. We haven't really decided yet.
We're still hashing that stuff out. But anyway,
so this is just phase 1 of that. So
phase 1, steel underpants. Never mind.
2 ? 3 profit.
There you go.
So let's move on to some topics that people have sent in. Now, here's the thing. We may not be able to cover all of them this week, which is fine because we need some content. And
and we need content for next week. I was telling Dave, I said, we've been making these podcasts like 2 hours long where we're going over every single thing, that we have in our arsenal. And then we can't do a podcast for 2 weeks because we need some more material.
Right.
So we're going to kind of, I would really like to get to the point where we're actually doing these every week. That's just me. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately. I've gotten back into the podcast thing, and I really want to start doing this every week because I get excited when my new podcasts that I follow are out.
And usually you like it to be on a regular schedule so that you know what's coming up.
Totally.
But I also like sometimes when people don't do one in a week because then I can catch up with the ones I'm behind on.
Yeah, but you listen to 10,000 podcasts every week.
I do. I listen to a lot of them. So I would say, let's start with the first 2 on our list here, and then we'll see where we're at that point and go from there.
Cool.
All right, so the first one, this is a discussion on discovering a niche or being generalized. So basically...
By Reddit user tcollier91.
91. Okay, so...
Or it could be French. It could be tcollier. I don't know.
All right, so there are advantages to both of these things about being very specific.
This one I saw last week, and it totally got me on a tangent for like 2 hours. I was going down the rabbit hole left and right
Why
with this one.
is that?
Well, he's saying if you want to talk technical, PY4D is what's intriguing me currently. So it's like, what's PY4D? So I started looking on it. It's like, oh, it's Python coding and stuff like that. And so I started looking into that, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and I'm like, oh, I've got to do some Python coding now. So maybe I can create our plugin. Oh, look, someone has already created our plugin. Let me see if I can get it to work.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was fun.
So
Thanks,
tell me
TCollie91.
what did you learn about Pi4D?
Nothing really.
Nothing?
Just no. I downloaded some of the assets in order to mess with it. So Pi4D apparently was bought out by Maxon or something like that, and
right?
Completely integrated into Cinema 4D. It's kind of cool, I guess. But here's the thing: you don't have to use Python. You can actually use C++,
right?
Or Coffee, whatever. I believe.
So describe, because it sounds like you looked more into it than I did. I mean, just describe it a little more. Like what?
I mean, you're basically. I mean, it's the same coding stuff. You open up a Python terminal and you're typing in all this stuff within Cinema 4D. And I mean, I didn't really look. I'm not a coder. I know some C++, but just enough to create a calculator. Nothing more than that. So I don't know. I mean, it's very like he said, it's intriguing me as well, but I just don't have enough time to look into it. It's
I've
cool.
seen some things like particle simulations and stuff like that, or like groups of stuff like schools of fish and such. Yeah. Is it something where you think that it's worth pursuing rather than trying to get into like Houdini integration?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it really depends on what your focus is. Like if you want to be able to control everything, then I would, if you want to have it's kind of like the iPhone versus the Android. And the Android users are always going to say you use an Android because you can customize it and you can hack it and you can do whatever you want with it, And iPhones, you're kind of stuck in this, their world. I that's kind of how I see this. If you're wanting to really dive deep into it and be able to control everything that you want, then I think, the Python coding and stuff like that, I mean, if you're learning that, then you can do just about anything because you're coding it directly into Cinema 4D. Versus just being able to use the Houdini plugins and stuff like that. I mean, that's more using it as nature intended or whatever, as Maxon intended. I don't know. That's my thought. It doesn't one way. It's not one way is better than the other. Unless you're talking about Apple and Android, then Apple's better, of course.
So let's do this. Let's go back to the discussion on niche or generalization, or generalist. I see advantages and disadvantages to both.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Let me tell you my initial impression of being a niche artist. I went in one time for an interview at one of the local places at Real Effects. And was it Real Effects?
Yeah.
No, not. I can't remember. Or was it Funimation? I think it might have been Funimation.
Is it the anime place?
Or Janimation. There's Funimation and Janimation, and I can't keep... One of them's all about anime, and one of them's not.
Funimation is about anime.
Okay, so it was Janimation.
Okay.
Too.
Anyway.
And I went in there, and it was more about being interviewed to be a manager of people.
Okay.
Having that background in animation and project management and that whole deal. And so he took me on a tour, he showed me around, and we were looking at people, and the first thing that I noticed is that it was a cubicle environment.
Oh man, I hate cubicle environments.
And so I started looking at what the different people are doing. And so these are people who are working on more like motion picture type stuff, right? So there will be people there who are doing particle simulations, right? And they're running stuff on like Unix and all sorts of weird stuff. And they're doing background things and server things, and everything is very Linux, Unix based. And then there's people in these cubicles, and each one of these people is doing something so niche that I don't know how wouldn't drive you insane. So you're sitting in a cubicle all day working with fur.
Oh, jeez.
With fur physics and fur physics on an arm all day. That's all you're doing, and you're working on arm fur physics on an entire motion picture all day, in and out, every day, for 3 or 4 months.
Oh my gosh.
Now, and you're in a cubicle. Keep that in mind. Okay, and there's all these people here working, and somebody else on the other side is working on the animation for those pieces. And then they change something, and then it goes back to you, and you got to change it again. And it's all you do all day is fur. Now, if you do that all day, I understand that you could probably get really good at it. You probably be really good at it, and you're probably hired because you're good at it.
Yeah.
And maybe you find that fun. But I see these people droning away in these cubicles, and I'm like, that's not the creative environment that I'm looking for.
Right.
Like, I would rather go into another area. I would rather become a production manager, a producer, or a department head manager before I went into something like that. Because, well, for one, personally, I feel like I have skills that are more geared toward that type of thing. But two, I don't want to sit in a cubicle all day.
Yeah.
And do that. I can't.
I do that currently, and it's draining at times. But
it's... you're in a cubicle? You're not in like an office or a desk or anything?
No, I have a desk, but we've got cubicles. Yeah, there's 4 cubicles on one side and then 4 cubicles on the other. Yeah, it's fun.
See, I'm not a cubicle guy, and even now, I'm just used to working either in an office or an open environment with huge desks with everybody around, not in a little cube. And I just couldn't imagine doing that. Now, I don't know.
I would choose a cubicle over, your big open area because, man, I couldn't handle, I need my own personal little space, Well,
I still have that.
I feel like your place is really open.
It is very open, but here's the thing. When it comes down to it day to day, you have I have a full area now, and it's so built up with monitors.
Yeah.
I have 5 screens around me. I literally, I have an old Mac Pro tower, and I have a Mac Pro trash can. And on the left side are 2 cinema displays, and on the right side are 2 newer cinema displays, and my laptop.
Jeez.
So I'm completely surrounded, and then I put in my headphones, and I'm in another universe. People have to tap me on the shoulder or wave at me to get my attention. So
that's funny.
I'm not too, I'm not too open.
Yeah.
You got to do that though. If you got to concentrate, you want to concentrate, you have to seclude yourself at times to get a bunch of work done.
For sure.
Now,
I used to work at a place where we couldn't listen to music.
You did?
Yeah.
Jeez.
We'd get in trouble if we listened to music on our iPad or our iPhones or this was way before on our MP3 players. Way before.
You have to have something, or at least a podcast to listen to.
Yeah. No.
How are you going to get your work done?
We also weren't even allowed to really talk. I mean, it was a very micromanaged place. Shut up, slave. That's funny.
Get back to work.
Okay, so as far as discovering a niche, generalized, I would have to say, there's my stutter again. I would say that you need to determine what you want to do. Are you okay with doing the exact same thing every other day, but being so good at it that you can make a fair amount of money? Here's the thing, these niche artists, they get hired specifically because they know how to do this stuff, and there's a very small market for it. There could be, a very small market for people who are really good at this one thing.
It would be harder to find a job.
Yes.
If you were good at fur on an arm all the time, or just fur in general, I guess,
I don't know.
It'd be harder to find a job.
Yes, but I feel like if you found that job, you would get paid really well for it because
Probably.
it's so hard to find. Now, if you're more generalized, you could make a lot of money going into management, going into becoming a creative director, art director, something like that. Because you're able to kind of like manage all these other elements, you know? Yeah, you know a little bit about fur. Yeah, you know a little bit about lighting. You know, yeah, you know a little bit about box modeling. Yeah, you know a little bit about all this other stuff, or you know a fair amount of all this stuff, and you can kind of do it all yourself. Well, being able to do that, you could also make a lot of money, you know, being in management. It really depends on what you want to do. And some people are made for management. Some people are made to where they're good at speaking with people. And there are other people who just want to sit in front of a computer and, you know,
Listen to music
and drone away and, you know, make fur move on arms, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really, are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Do you want to make a lot of money? You know, are you okay? You know, some generalized people kind of put themselves in a corner because they don't know enough about it.
Right.
But,
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Correct. You know, that's what I feel like I am, but I do pretty well for myself, you know?
Well, I think there's another way to look at being a generalist as well three things here. Number one, you can be a generalist of certain things, but not all of them. So I guess what I'm saying is you could be good at like 4 things. Really good at
Only
4 things. But then there's also like 6 other things you're okay with, right? Or you could be this other kind of person who is super, super generalist. Like, I can do anything, but I'm not very good at any of them. You know, where you would be a little bit more hireable if you were good at 4 specific things. And then there's also a third part of that, which is, you know, you might be really good at doing a certain type of thing, and you like the variety, and you like to challenge, and you're good at a challenge. You know, you could be a generalist that's good at certain things, but you, like, for me, for example, if somebody asked me, as a generalist, if somebody came to me and asked me to do character animation, I would say that's not really my thing. We should have so-and-so do it instead of me. But if I am the only option, I'm going to figure out how to do it. Now, some people aren't going to figure out how to do it. Some people aren't going to be able to figure out how to do it. That makes them a good generalist, but it makes them a different kind of generalist because they're not able to problem solve.
Yeah.
But you got to be willing to admit as a generalist that you're not good at something.
Yes. And that comes up quite a bit at my job, you know? Like, I talked about it a couple of weeks ago that I was doing just HTML all day, you know, or for a couple hours or whatever. And sometimes my work will come to me. We had one guy who was kind of like, he was a generalist when it came to Cinema 4D, when it came to, you know, web design, when it came to all this other stuff, you know. He was really good at just about everything. He left. And so kind of that job, or all those jobs that he had, have now moved on to me because they know that I know a little bit about just all this stuff. And so there's a lot of times when I'll say, I don't know the answer to that, but I will figure it out. And I do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Google is an excellent resource.
Oh, man. You got to be good at Googling things. That's the other thing. Some people aren't good at that.
Hey,
that's half of being a problem solver.
Office to Google myself?
That's half of being a problem solver. If you're the type of person that needs to go to yahoo.com and you type yahoo.com into the Google search box, maybe you need to think of whether or not you're good at finding stuff online.
Did you just go to Yahoo and type in go to google.com?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's the thing. So, yeah, I mean, in a generalist, obviously, you're going to find jobs at more places.
I will say, as a generalist, it is very easy to find a job.
But
extremely easy to find a job.
Not necessarily a good job.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a good job, you know?
Well,
I've I've always had good jobs, and I will say, as a journalist, when you're freelancing, that's really easy. It's much easier to freelance as a generalist than it is being a niche artist.
Right, but what happens is you get a lot of companies that are cheap.
Yeah.
And so they say, oh, we need a generalist because then we can just pay one guy who can do all of these things and we can just run him into the ground.
Yep.
And that happens a lot. So if you see somebody that says you need to be a jack of all trades, like right there, that's your red flag. You need to be very careful of that.
Yes. Yeah. I can see that. All right.
All right, so let's move on to, let's do one more.
Okay.
Let's do one more.
You want to do the next one, or you want to go on to another one, or you want to go, who do you want to go to?
Well, let's go to the next one on the list because it kind of relates to your tutorial, I think.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so Reddit user Waves to Graves. Wavy to Gravy.
Wavy to gravy, baby. What's up?
Waves to Graves. He asks, I'd like to hear about how you approach Photoshop integration with Cinema 4D. For example, PSD layers for specular, gloss, bump, alphas, etc. Maybe UV mapping, if you ever use that. Now, I will say, the general UV mapping, I just stick with that. I've done a little bit. I'm a journalist. I've done a little bit of UV mapping, and I just it's difficult to deal with.
It is difficult to deal with.
The unwrapping and stuff like that. But I don't know if Waves to Graves, if you guys want to check out, I know we've got one particular one. Where is it? The tutorial where you talk about, you did the Brograph Johnny Walker label or whatever. Yeah, that one's one of my favorites because it talks about, that really goes into using PSD layers for specular and bump and so on and so on. Let's see, what is it called? What was that one called?
It's the liquor bottle tutorial, I think.
Yeah.
Or bottle label tutorial.
Intro to Reflectance channel.
Okay, that's right. This was the first time I went into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Reflectance channel one is a really good one because he's building this Johnny Runner red label bottle, and Dave creates this label, but he's using all these different layers in order to achieve different effects. That's a pretty good one.
Well, and the nice thing about that is that, of course, this is using Reflectance channel. Now, I really, really hope that Octane 3 kind of does this same thing so that it's not as complicated. I love Octane, and I'm in it 99% of the time, but I wish that I could do some of the things that's in the new Reflectance channel because
totally agree.
It's so nice to be able to mask certain things and to group things within Photoshop because you have one nice Photoshop file, and within that Photoshop file you can do folders, and then you can go into your Reflectance channel and tell it use this folder for this thing, use this folder for bump, use this folder for gloss, use this folder for whatever, right? Or for a mask for something. And I really like that because it's one file and you don't have to worry about it. Now, when you go into Octane or anything else for that matter, with Vray or
not necessarily. Vray will allow you to do it. I mean,
Vray does allow you to do it.
You have to bring in the individual channels. I don't know if you can go through and you can't select the individual layers like you can. I don't think.
It's the layers that are the big thing because it's so great that you can go into Cinema and you could say,
now here's a question for you.
Pull an alpha channel.
With Octane, it will automatically convert. It'll basically automatically convert your Cinema 4D materials to Octane. Have you played around with that, where you create something, using the entire spec and gloss and bump and whatever, using the Reflectance channel and then rendering it out in Octane? Does it look the same?
That is a good question. I don't know how it handles moving those layers. And I should check and see what it does. Because now there's a couple different things that I do. Number one, it is easy to do some conversion on that level because let's say that you are using black and white. as an alpha for something. You can actually bring that in, and Octane will. Okay, if you try and pull an alpha, let's say, when you're doing a mixed material, you can pull an alpha and it will pull the alpha channel from something, or you could just leave it in regular image mode and bring in a black and white, and it will interpret black and white as an alpha, which is nice because you don't have to go back into Photoshop. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give you the granularity of being able to go into like subfolders and check and uncheck things. It's really cool to be able to go in and say, okay, well, for my bump map, I want to have this, and then for my normals map, I want to have this, but then I want to pull the alpha from this thing and then just be able to check and uncheck certain sub-layers.
Yeah, totally.
Where you can't do that.
Because you were using, in that particular example, in that tutorial, you were using like ones that weren't actually black and white as the alphas.
Right, because you can tell it to pull the alpha channel from a layer, which is nice. Where if you wanted to do that with Octane, you would have to go in and
save out each individual one.
Yeah, each individual one. Now, here's the way that I go about doing that. If I'm going to do them separate, what I will do just to keep it all clean and to keep it organized is, first of all, everything I pull from a Photoshop file, because there's not a real reason to save everything as a Photoshop file and as something else. The only time I do that is like if I have a master file that I'm pulling from. For example, if I'm trying to convert that Johnny Runner bottle into Octane, I'll have that master Photoshop, and then I'll take the stuff I've already done and I'll take the folders and I'll save them separately.
Okay.
Maybe as just a PNG or something that's just a smaller file. Because if you already have like a massive gigabyte texture file, you don't want to duplicate that 10 times. Your project files are going to get huge. But if I am just doing this separately to begin with, I'll do like texture.psd, and that's my diffuse. And then I'll do texture underscore spec, texture underscore bump, texture underscore alpha, and really make that in a way to where I will never have to like go load something manually. Because what I love to do, especially if I'm working with a texture and with an alpha, which is most of the time it's just a texture and an alpha, I'll do the texture, I'll have it up in Octane, and this works as well with anything else in Cinema that's not Octane, just any kind of texture file where you can type in that file manually, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's faster just to go in and just type in the file field underscore alpha, underscore bump, underscore spec, underscore whatever.
I do that all the time.
And not have to click the three dots and then go to the directory, and then the thing isn't defaulted to the right directory, and you got to find it and go to the text folder, and you got to click. All you got to do is just do underscore whatever. And if you keep that file structure like perfect, like exactly the same, and don't deviate from it, you're never going to have a problem.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Now, what else as far as Photoshop integration with Cinema 4D could we get into? Not just about file organization, but how you create stuff.
I don't know. As far as the tutorial that I'm putting out today, deals with actually creating the repeatable patterns and stuff like that. I mean, that's the big amount of Photoshop that I use. When I'm creating wallpapers and stuff like that, from these small little samples. That's how I use Photoshop the most. But also creating bumps. One cool thing about Photoshop 2015, I don't know if you've played with this or not, Dave, but if you go to Filter 3D, you can do a generate bump map now.
And, really?
Yes, and it's a pretty sweet bump map too. Like you can see it on whether you want it on a sphere, whether you want it on a cone or a donut, a hat, and you can blur it. You can put different detail into it. You can invert the height. You can see it with different lighting stuff, and it's pretty accurate. So I've done that quite a few times where I will I'll bring my regular material into Photoshop and then just create a bump map from it.
And have you ever created a like fake normal map?
I believe you can generate a normal map as well.
Okay, that's nice.
It's got
That's
the
real
filter,
nice.
3D, generate bump map, or generate normal map, and you can choose either one.
That's really nice. Because my technique before was that I would actually do a bevel emboss style, layer style, and then I would color pick layers from existing normal maps to create like a fake one.
Yeah.
And I've had to do an animated normal map before, which that's complicated.
Oh, geez.
I had to do that in After Effects. That's how I went about doing it in After Effects.
Wow. There's sometimes when I'm trying to bring out the detail in an image or something, I'll use a high pass filter. I don't know if you've messed with a high pass filter at all. Where basically you make a duplicate of your image, and then under filter other, there's a high pass, which basically takes the lights and the darks and makes them more light or dark. It's almost like crushing the levels or whatever. But then whenever you do a linear light or whatever, it really pops those details. So that once you bring the image into cinema, you really get a really crisp, like super crisp texture.
Super crisp.
Super crisp.
It's my favorite cereal.
Is it? That's funny.
Now, here that reminds me of something that I do in After Effects a lot, which is the threshold. I use a threshold for stuff a lot of times. But thing I was going to say about bump, and if you're, and I'm not sure, I'm going to have to look into how this works now with the new Photoshop.
It's pretty sweet. Have you used Crazy Bump in
all the
past?
time?
It's exactly like that. It is exactly like that.
Now here's the thing. Well, you can't save settings with Crazy Bump, and you can't exactly do this in Photoshop either. Now this might be different. Or it might apply even to the new filter now. But what I like to do, and the reason that even if I have a simple bump file, let's say you create a texture and it's a Photoshop file. Okay, you create a duplicate of that to be your bump, right? And the first thing you want to do is you want to go in and you want to mix everything down and delete layers that you're not going to use for your bump, because that's just going to take up more space on your hard drive, right? Or whatever you're using. It's going to make the file big and bulky. And so that's the first thing you do. Well, if I'm creating a bump map, a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm only going in and I am turning something black and white somehow, and then I am adding Gaussian blur to it.
Yeah.
And when you do that, my go-to is to always go to level 3 Gaussian, right? Every single time, just go to level 3 Gaussian. Now, before you do that level 3 Gaussian, you might have multiple layers that you're using for this bump or whatever. You duplicate everything that's going to be Gaussian blurred, and you hold down Command E, or I believe Control E. It mixes down those layers to one layer in Photoshop. And because these are duplicates, it's going to be on top of everything else. You turn off the background ones. You leave them for reference in case you have to go back later and fix something. You leave them in the file, though. And then you have that one on top, and then you duplicate that, and you turn off the first one. So you have all the reference layers turned off. You have your flattened version, and that is turned off because that is your clean version. And then the one on top is where you put the level 3 Gaussian blur. Because what happens is if you go into Cinema and you load up that bump, and you're like, well, this is too harsh still. Like the edges are still too harsh. It needs to be softer. There's only so much you can do. You can adjust some of that with your gamma. You can adjust some of that with your intensity, with your brightness or whatever, or contrast. But sometimes it's just not soft enough, and you're going to go back in, and let's say you do too much. Let's say you do too much Gaussian blur. Let's say you do a 6 and you want it to be a 3. You can't step backwards from that.
Right.
So you don't want to screw yourself. So you want to be non-destructive with your method and your workflow in that you can go back and you can get that clean version of your mix down, then give it a level 3 instead of a level 6 Gaussian, and you can bring back in. Now, I haven't explored the version that you're talking about.
Yeah, 2015, it gives you the ability to adjust the amount of blur, and you can see, as you are doing the bump map or the normal map.
But is it non-destructive?
It is destructive, yes.
It's still destructive, so you would still want to use the same method.
Well, here's the thing. Here's something that you could do. You can take everything. So what I normally do is I'll select my entire image, and I'll do Shift Command C, which is copy merged.
Right.
So it's basically copying everything, and then I'll paste a copy of that. And that's what I'll use for all my effects and everything, or even when I'm doing like clone stamping or something like that. I'll clone stamp on that. But the 3D, the generate bump map, gives you the ability to set your blur and set your detail scale as well. So like you can set it to like a really high blur, and then it'll smooth it out. You could set your detail really low. It's pretty cool. It's actually a really cool thing to use, and I use it all the time now.
So it's a similar method.
Yeah.
Now with alphas.
What I was going to say, as far as the non-destructive, something you could do is you could create your do that copy merged, and then you could convert that image or that layer to a smart object. Once you create that layer to a smart object, you could generate a bump map on it, and then that is non-destructive because it's a smart object, and then you can go back and you can change it over and over and over again. That's the method that I would use.
Right. And now I do believe that if you do a smart object, it is going to increase your file size a bit. So it depends on your application. Now with alphas, as far as standard render in Cinema 4D, there's a couple ways to go about that, because you could tell it to interpret a layer as an alpha channel based on black and white. You could tell it to base your alpha channel on a certain layer. But then there's also the option to create the alpha within Photoshop and have it pull that. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that too. What do you usually do when you create an alpha? Do you just take from the entire file as a whole? Do you create a layer in your Photoshop file that's specifically for alpha?
Yeah, I create an entirely new image, and I'll name it. I do like you do. I'll duplicate the image, create my alpha in Photoshop, and then just rename it _alpha. That's all I do. Unless it's a PSD and it's already got an alpha on it, and I'm just grabbing from that, then I'll use the same PSD. I don't create a whole nother one.
Right, because you can just pull from the master.
Exactly.
Right.
So. All right.
Well, hopefully that covers all of that. The UVW mapping thing, it's one of those things where I got to admit, I'm a generalist that doesn't deal much with UV mapping, and
I wish I knew more about it. I wish I was better equipped to deal with it, because when I'm creating some of these interior scenes and I'm having to create pillows or something like that, the other day I created a it was a bag for like some frozen fruit or something. It was just I don't know, just a 3D rendering of it. And so I started making oh my gosh, wrinkles and stuff using the sculpting tools. Once I started using the sculpting tools, it messed up my whole UV, And so I wish I had known more about it in order to prevent that from happening.
Well, the thing about mapping is if you've watched the Brograph breakdown number 2 on Octane bottles, I kind of go into how I did the crown bottle. Because in that case, there was no good way. I mean, you could try and sculpt. I mean, if you know what a crown bottle looks like, it has all of these diamond raised areas in it. And they are, in this case, they were bump mapped. But they could have just as well been displacement. I just chose to bump map them because you really can't tell the difference. And but it's so intricate. There's no way that you could possibly go in and make them look right just using some sort of sculpting tool or Photoshop. I had to do an unwrap of the bottle. I had to do an unwrap because there's no other good way to do it. And even in doing so, the different parts of the bottle that wrap around one side of a UV map, like the edge of a bottle, you got to make it match the other side. Now, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Make it match the other side. There's some trial and error, but you got to be able to unwrap it so that you can paint it.
Yeah.
And I had to hand draw in Photoshop the bumping on that and then do separate layers. That's another case where I had master layers and I had different layers that were blurred and Gaussian blurred in different ways, just in case I had to go back, because that's super intricate. You don't want to destructively edit that and then realize you have to start over.
Yeah, totally.
I think those were splines to begin with. And then I added some sort of stroke to them and then blurred them. So that's the extent of mapping for me, and I haven't done much more of that unless I'm trying to export something for Unreal Engine. And usually it's not something I have to mess with after the fact. It exports the maps and then it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's a good tutorial too. I really liked that one. That bottle turned out looking really nice.
Yeah, that one seems to be pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
I was super afraid of doing of learning reflectance, and once I realized how powerful it was, I was very happy with it, and just love. I love the fact that you can mask stuff.
Yeah.
The masks are really, really a cool thing to have.
Yeah, I like that about Vray as well. Vray gives you the option to be able to mask out individual things. I've used it quite a few times when I'm. I've got some of these wallpapers that are like super shiny, but only in parts.
Yeah.
And so whenever we photograph them, like what I'll have them do is like do this like super extreme lighting to where all the shiny parts will end up black. And I'll crush my levels. So I'll get, and I'll use that as an alpha for creating super shiny areas in my wallpapers.
It's a good way to do it.
Yeah, totally. I learned that from you.
I learned it by watching you.
That's funny.
Well, we got other stuff, but I think we should probably save it for the next one.
Yeah, totally. So we'll end it out on our artist of the week. Mm-hmm. We have an artist of the week.
We do?
Now we went out and found this artist of the week because he's a friend of ours.
Right.
Because none of you guys actually sent us anything. So shame on you. Send us stuff if you want to be our featured artist of the week. We'll throw your stuff up on our blog, and we'll talk about you on the podcast. And we have millions and millions of listeners, so you'll get your name out there.
Yeah, millions. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about Lance is
Lance Eckert is our artist of the week, by the way.
He started just as a 2D After Effects guy.
Mm-hmm. He used, what was the 3D plugin that he was using? He used
two of them. He used, or maybe it's Invigorator. Is that Zachworks?
Zachworks Invigorator.
He used Invigorator, and he did some things with Invigorator that were ridiculous.
Yes, like crazy ridiculous.
Like took him forever, and it was like he was to a point where I was like, dude, you have to get into 3D because the type of stuff you're spending all this time on now could be done in literally minutes in cinema, and I know you could handle it. There are people who do only After Effects, and there are people who do both After Effects, like 2D and 3D, and you were one of those people who could obviously do both.
Yes, and he was creating animated Illustrator files, like going frame by frame and changing the splines in order to animate and stuff, in order to do these extrusions and
3D stroke. He's using a lot of 3D stroke for stuff. Yeah, I mean,
and he still uses a lot of After Effects.
That's his favorite part, is what he tells me. Is that he loves to do the After Effects part of it. He renders out a lot of object buffers.
Yes, he does.
I'm talking about like 12 object buffers so that he has complete control in post.
Yes.
Because that's his favorite part.
Yeah. And he is one of the best artists I think I've ever seen. Like, some of the 2D stuff that he does is absolutely incredible. He creates these giant matte paintings from just crap on Google,
Right.
and
Right.
like makes it look so realistic. He's very, very good at that, and
He's very anal about that stuff too.
Yes.
About even cutting stuff out, man. Like, I can tell you, I am not big on cutting stuff out, and I will chop things up, man.
Totally.
When I'm trying to
Here
cut
too.
it.
Yeah.
And he is totally like methodically getting perfect cutouts of stuff. High res cutouts of stuff, and it's clean, man. It shows in the end.
Very.
But with Lance, I was like, dude, you have to do 3D, and I had written a book about how that was specifically aimed for people who are in After Effects and want to move to Cinema 4D, and it's called The Jump. Now, this was at a time when I think Cinema was on version 13 to 14, and so there were some things that happened in 13 to 14 that made parts of my book irrelevant. So it kind of hit the cutting room floor, so to speak, and I'm still holding on to it and thinking about publishing it at some point, but I have to go back and change a lot.
I've been saying that you should for a while.
I'll get to it. Add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
So, I had a kind of a bound, one of those Kinko's bound versions of the book, and I gave it to him. I'm like, look, take a look at this, skim through this book. It's not that long, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to go through this. And, dude, he picked up Cinema in, like, days.
Yeah, literally days.
Yeah. And the same thing came to Octane. When it came down to Octane and he sat with me and we did Octane, he learned it in days. He was like, man, sorry I'm not really doing this so fast. I'm like, dude, you're learning, like, how to do Cinema 4D in literal days. You're learning how to do Octane in days. Like, that's a lot to take in, and you're doing a very good job at it. And he takes it and runs with it. Now, the advantage that Lance has is that he's very much an art director.
Yes, for sure.
He has the eye. He has a lot of composition know-how. He has a lot of, classic training and on technique and what would you call it? On theory. And it very much shows in everything he does in composition theory and color theory and the whole a lot of stuff that I didn't have because I didn't go to school specifically to train in graphic arts like he did. We've talked about that before. Like, I was going for video. I think, were you going for any you went to...
I went to the Art Institute. Mine was video. Mine was just general general video and stuff. But I had been doing editing since I was in high school. So really that was my big focus, was editing and After Effects and motion graphics and stuff like that.
So what you can see, he finished his reel this week. Yep. And I'm going to post that in the notes.
Yeah. Should we post it on the notes, or should we post it on the blog as featured artist of the week?
Well, we'll do both.
Okay, cool.
Now, the thing about his reel is you can definitely see his style.
For sure, yeah.
You definitely see he has a style, but also he has a lot of variance in styles. But he definitely has his own particular style. And then when you see his individual stuff, he's done a really unique thing with his reel where he has found things that flow together perfectly. Yes. It is like one long, smooth, buttery camera motion.
That was something that I was just blown away. And the amount of time that he must have spent on that is incredible. Because literally, and I've seen a lot of his spots before, and I know how different they are. And he's just like straight up making them flow from one to the next. I mean, I think there was a point where there was like maybe 3 or 4 seconds where he had thrown in 3 or 4 graphics that he had done, all in just one big transition. Man, it was cool. He
spent probably 15 days on this reel.
Wow.
I believe. So you have to check it out. You'll see. Now, what we're going to do with this artist thing, I don't know if we'll always have an artist for every show, but what we're going to do with this is we're going to give people time to look at this. And hopefully in the next few shows, we're going to have Lance on.
Totes.
So if you see stuff in that reel that you like and you want to know about how he did something or why he did something or what technique was used or what program or whatever your question is about something you see in the reel, we want to get kind of a Q&A thing going for him so we can ask him these questions.
Totally.
So give that a look. Think about what you want to ask him about what he's done, and write us. So you can get in touch with us through a million different venues. Of course, we've got Facebook. We've got Twitter. We've got Instagram. We're on YouTube. Of course, we're on Brograph.com.
We've got our own subreddit, the Brograph Tutorials subreddit. You can send us
kind of a list. Yeah.
Yeah, you can send us a message straight through the user Brograph Tutorials on Reddit as well.
And what's our email address?
Our email address is brographToots, Tuts. So brographToots@gmail.com.
So send your questions there.
Yep.
And shout out to Sage of Shadow and Kryptonaut in the Cinema 4D subreddit moderators.
Moperators?
Rambly Moperators.
Yeah, Rambly Moperator.
It's such a great place. I think it's a really, really great community, and I think it's the nicest, most forgiving community.
Even though you're too scared to put your new reel on there.
I just don't like to. It's not really that. I don't know. You should post my reel for me.
I will post your reel.
All right. I wish you would. That's because I'm never happy with anything I do 100%.
I know the feeling.
But
this tutorial that I'm posting tonight, I actually went back and recorded some stuff because I wasn't happy once I started editing it.
That's understandable. I've done that before.
Me too.
But the great thing about this is, I don't know if you've ever gone into like the VFX subreddit. They're not as forgiving.
No.
And especially sites like MoGraph, oh my gosh, you will get eaten alive in MoGraph. And even now the MoGraph people are moving to a motion graphics Slack channel.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I've gotten on there. There's a lot of people on there.
Wow.
And for the most part, they're nice. But there's water cooler sections. People are talking on there 24/7, just like a constant conversation.
Jeez.
But people are very, very harsh in some of these areas. And, sometimes that's a good thing. When I posted one of my original reels years ago on MoGraph, I got destroyed.
Jeez.
And when you're at that level, you just don't quite even understand, that your stuff isn't where it needs to be. And mine wasn't. Mine was awful. And I got absolutely destroyed. But what I like about this subreddit is that even the newbies, everybody's very nice to them. There's no reason to be people were really mean to me on MoGraph.net. It was bad. Like yelling at me for not understanding certain things. And I'm like, dude, just, I'm just looking for constructive criticism. I don't want to be cut down. I understand that I'm new. I'm not saying that I'm look how awesome this is. I'm just saying, here's my reel, give me some pointers. Don't chew me up, spit me out. /r/Cinema4D if you want to check that out. Everybody's great. And I have many times thought, for a split second before deciding not to, oh, well, why not put a forum on Brograph, and maybe we can have a Cinema 4D forum, kind of more along the lines of C4D Cafe or whatever it's called. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why do that? And instead of just going to Reddit.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. That's a great place to be. So if you're somebody who hasn't heard about us in there, because I know a lot of people are actually from there, you found us on iTunes.
Which is awesome. Thank all you guys.
Yes. Please, go check that out and see what people are doing in there. Help people out too. If you see people posting a question in there, anytime it's something that I really look at it, I'm like, oh, I totally know the answer to this.
Yeah.
I'll dig in there.
Yeah, help them, because who knows, it may be me asking the question.
Karma.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, please rate us on iTunes if you like the show.
Totally.
Give us a rating. You don't have to leave a review, but you can leave a review if you want. Mainly the rating. That's what really gets us up there in the charts, puts us kind of out there with other people. We're trying to spread the word. If you know of anybody else who'd be interested in the show, please tell them about it, or just give us a little post on your Facebook or Twitter or something and tell other people about it, because it really helps get the word out, not only about our show and what we're doing, but it helps drive people to the tutorials and the other stuff that we're going to be coming out with that'll help us sustain the website and keep moving forward.
Totally. Yeah, and I was actually looking at the arts and whatever section of iTunes, and then I went into new and noteworthy. I had to go down about 4 or 5 pages, but I found us there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are we in? I thought we were in education or something.
No, we're in arts and something, like visual arts.
Oh, education and then _ visual arts or something, subheading.
Yeah. So.
And remember, you've been there and you've done that with Brograph, so now get the T-shirt.
Yeah. No Brograph, no MoGraph.
Yeah, no Brograph, no MoGraph. We will post it on the site when they're available. Hopefully this week. I think we should be getting our shirts.
Yeah, totally.
And as long as there's not something wrong with them, we're going to post it publicly.
Yeah, cool. So you said we were on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube, and Brograph.com.
Yep.
So make sure and check us out. Thank you guys so much for listening. And we'll probably be back next week.
Yeah, probably.
Cool. All right. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you later, bros.
I'm Dave Koss.
And I'm Matt Milstead.
Have a good one. It's pretty good, I guess. Brograph.com, an online resource for learning critical components of Cinema 4D and After Effects, specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
We give you professional time-saving tips, shortcuts, and lessons that help give you an edge over your fellow designers. Not only this, but our new Brograph Talks help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Join us for live sessions, check out our crazy Cinema 4D experiments, or just watch our Fun with Brograph series, where we show you practical applications for techniques learned in previous tutorials. Do this from the beginning, and your client is going to respect that, and they're going to respect you, and they're going to respect your time. Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead, all with a slight dash of dry humor peppered in. Real nice banana.
Brograph.com, your source for tutorials that will help you thrive in the motion graphics industry. Don't just play around with Cinema 4D and After Effects, master it, and make money by becoming indispensable at your workplace.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here. Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials. It's pretty good, I guess.